We are live. It is 2024 NFL season kickoff. Ron and I are here. We waste no time promoting, selling, asking you to do squat. We're going to have an informal conversation and catch up on what we're looking at going into week one, what we might learn from week one, and various other issues that are going to pop up. So basically an unscripted look at week one. We'll see what happens. Viewer questions are always welcome. And Ron, how you doing? What's going on?
Well, I'm working remotely this week, so I hope the audio and everything comes out okay. Apologize in advance if it doesn't. But as far as week one, obviously the lines have been out for a long time. Some opinions have changed based on what happened between August 15th and today, September 3rd. But just anxious to get rolling, have some warning signs for people, and whatever other conversation comes up. There's certainly plenty to talk about with the season 48 hours away.
What's most important to you right now?
Most important right now is this is coming up week one. I think this is my yearly warning to everybody. Bankroll management matters. So let's not take this topic lightly. If you have a subpar week one, let's not chase right away. Let's not use up the bankroll. Keep that 1%, 2%, 3% of your overall wagering money in mind. You're not going to solve the world's problems week one. There's going to be overreactions that Cris and I will be talking about next week, where a team wasn't quite as good as we thought, and maybe they were better than we thought. We've seen it in college already. Maybe it wasn't an overreaction for Florida State being 0-2, but it is an overreaction in a couple of other areas that I expect teams to rebound. Happens every year. Be careful right away, bankroll management, week one.
I think what was most important to me was getting 2023 behind me. It was not a banner year. First losing season since 2016. It's very important to go back to whatever you're betting so that you can evaluate whether things went right or wrong for specific reasons, and to evaluate, what might need to be changed. I want to know why I lost. I want to know why I won. So obviously I had a lot of personal issues, and I moved, and time was not my friend. So I was actually dreading going back for two reasons, just because it takes time, and it wasn't. It's a lot easier to look back in time when you're looking at winners than it is losers. So I wanted to get that taste out of my mouth. But as I went through the process, I felt really good about it. One of the conclusions is that I don't really need to change anything. I'm not that concerned. I honestly evaluate. A lot of variance worked against me. You have to be honest with it, and this is one thing I'm going to absolutely do, and you can bring it up, is I am going to be charting all the games for basic, what I call bad bounce luck or good bounce luck. I think it's going to be something I want to absolutely track. I should have been tracking it last year. I think I started it last year and just got so busy I couldn't, but I've determined it's a very high priority. I want to know how many games I'm winning because of bounces and bad calls or good calls, or what. I want to know the reasons specifically in several different categories of why I'm winning and losing games. Do you do any of that?
I've been doing it for years. Kind of the self-critique is I know my record betting for and against every team over the last 5, 10, 20 years. I know my record with coaches. I look back and I say, wow, I had 8 games 8 bets on this team. 6 of them were for them and 2 of them were against them. And I was lukewarm or negative against them. Why did I do that? There's always a couple of teams where I shake my head and say, I didn't do as I said I was going to do, and something went wrong and I was top heavy. That's why in my team by team report, which I sent you, Cris, and I sent to others and anybody who wanted a particular team preview, I offered it. I have my own personal strategy so that I can make sure I have the means to where I need to pivot when I need to pivot if I'm not seeing something that meets my benchmarks. So I have that as far as what I've done. And I do track bad luck and good luck. It's been brought up before. I don't know if we've brought it up before, but if you're relatively good at this and you're efficient at this and you understand situations, power ratings, this, that, your models and stuff like that, you're going to create more situations when you have close games. And a lot of smart people say your overall luck variance is going to be a little bit below 50% because you put yourself in position to win more times than other people put themselves in position. And I think that's an important point. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think in some respects, if you have like 30 games that could bounce either way, the expectation to me would be that I would be maybe 13 and 17 in terms of good luck, bad luck, because I put myself in position to be in that situation. Now, sometimes I've had good luck. It was comical a few years ago when I was something like 7 and 24 in terms of good luck, bad luck. That really put a dent in what was otherwise like a 55% season could have been a 62% season or something like that. But mostly I expect a little bit low negative, bad luck, good luck. But I chart it. I'm actually on the good luck ledger on college so far this year. Got a real good break in one of the games.
Yeah, I didn't think my toss-up luck was that great in 22. That's one of the reasons why we talked about it last year and why I wanted to start charting it. And I'm just very regretful that I don't have the exact numbers for last year. And it's just too difficult to go back and as far as I'm concerned, and make sure that it's accurate. It's best done fresh. So this gentleman has a comment, which I agree with. Lots of landmines week 1, but I don't necessarily feel uncomfortable about it. I just feel that there's week 1 is not as scary to me as week 18.
I love week 18s, but week 1s, vary. I can make point counterpoint. I can play devil's advocate on my own plays and my own leans. It's not as clean cut this year. And it's been a tale of 2 years, 3 years for me. 2022, 4 of my top 6 plays over for the whole season ended up being week 1, which was an incredible week for matchups, revenge game situations, teams that didn't do well in August versus teams that did, new coaches. It worked out perfectly. And last year was 2 and 3 for me in terms of week 1. In fact, I didn't really get rolling until after week 6. I was 12 and 12 after the first 6 weeks, which means that every year is different. Just because you've always had you had a good week 1, 2 or 3 years in a row doesn't mean it's going to be the same. These are all low sample sizes. Even though the lines have been out all year, there's only a handful of games, especially in the NFL each week. And the fact that somebody went 2 and 3, maybe that could have been 0 and 5, maybe that could have been 3 and 2 or 4 and 1. Games are tight in the NFL. Edges are small. You want to get the best line value you can. Shop around. So every year is different. I have a lot of feelings and opinions. I agree with you, Cris. I'm not scared of week 1, but I don't feel like I'm going to hit it out of the park either. The games are tight.
Yeah, I actually chart my week by week record for each year. And this last year was a little difficult because I had to change it around because I changed betting strategies. But the way that I charted 2023, I decided because of my regular betting with teasers and parlays and various bet sizing issues, I just strictly went through the model and what the model would have had for a record for each week. But I think I ended up with the model was a loser for the year, but it was 4-0 on week one. Or no, that wouldn't have been from the model. Week one would have been what I actually bet on the sides, but I ended up having a toilet roll last year. 14-7, I ended up going. Had everything: teasers, parlays, first halves, totals, sides. So it became quite active, and most of it came pretty late in the week too. So I don't feel any panic. I know what all the lines were a week ago or even 3 days ago, and I may pay the price for not taking those, and some of them may be moving into place for me even better. So I'm not panicked about it. I think moving has made me more relaxed, so I don't feel the same pressure to act quickly, and I don't have as much FOMO as I used to.
Well, that's good. I mean, you still moving or not, because I went through the same process last year. And, then there are life events happen, like what I'm going through this week. But still, if you have a routine and you can somehow stick to it, that's the best thing to do, is to stick to some sort of routine, what you do on Monday, what you do on Tuesday, and so on and so forth. And so far, of course, years of practice, I think, I'm guessing you do the same thing. But for me, I'm pretty good at sticking to the routine. I'm pretty good at understanding where I need to be at each phase before the kickoffs happen.
Anybody that's not familiar, that's listening in, they're wondering why we don't talk about the games. And it's like, you keep hitting the nail on the head. For me, it's process. It's having control over the environment, and you hit the nail on the head with its habits and routine. And I am extremely cognizant that I want to get a routine going that was better than last year. I think I can't overcome what the model lead me to do, but I can take responsibility for the habits and the routine, and making sure that I'm putting myself in a position to make good choices and have good moods, and not be scrambling all the time. So that, looking into the season, that's extremely important to me.
Okay, I have a question for you off the cuff. Let me preface it by, when I have my power ratings and power rating plays, sometimes the line is 3 points off, 5 points off, whatever the case may be. I don't know if you chart this, and sometimes it matters to people and sometimes it doesn't. But when your model points you in a certain direction, does it matter how far the model is off from the line? Are you seeing better results when your model is 4 or 5 points off versus 2 or 3 points off, or worse results or the same results? Have you charted that?
I have lots of experience with that, actually, for several reasons.
Good.
When I was taught one of the processes that I use, I was warned that just play them all the same. Don't refrain from betting more on the ones that are way off. They're all going to come out about the same. You're not going to see a difference. And I, of course, was stubborn and didn't listen. And when games are way off, I was putting more on them. And sure enough, they all seem to win at the same rate. So, which is kind of frustrating too. I mean, I make what I do available to follow on Wager Talk, and people are always looking for big gains rather than some sort of consistency week to week. So When people put out big game sales, people flock to big games, like flies on poop. So I found that trying to use the games that were the farthest off again, I went back to the old school approach, or I'm going to ignore what I was taught, wasn't helping me. I mean, those games weren't performing as well as I should. I'm better off using personal handicapping in addition to what the numbers say, rather than just trusting the numbers. They don't win at any better rate, to simply answer your question in 5 minutes.
Okay, well, let me tell you my approach, which is pretty similar to yours, because when my power ratings are off a certain amount, whether it be 3 points, 5 points, or whatever, if it's way off, then I look back and say, what am I missing at the extreme? But otherwise, if no other factors are involved, because I've said this, I do power rating analysis, matchup analysis, and situational analysis. If it's strictly a power rating play and there are no other factors, then I will flat bet each power rating play, whether they're 3 points off, 6 points off, or whatever. So that's similar to what you're saying. You're just kind of playing them all the same. But if I have plays that, well, this line is off and I have matchup analysis data, or I have situational analysis data, then I play it more. And especially more if maybe the power rating is a little bit stronger. But power ratings on their own yield a 1% flat play for me if there are no other factors.
The
biggest is when
I find that
that is true for me. That is absolutely true for me for power ratings. Over the years, as the game used to be simple.
I just have to find, I do have to tweak, and I just, there's no way that certain teams are not going to be completely off the reservation every year. And you just need to know how to treat those teams when you have them each year. And it's different each year, because you have to try to determine what's throwing it off for that particular team. And it goes back to what you said. Well, we're tracking teams too. So I don't have I need to update my record with teams from last year also, but I was charting the same things. And, you notice patterns. For you in college, it was always coaching and that type of thing. It's a little harder in the NFL, but I would notice patterns like New England always seem to fundamentally grade out and differently than what their performance was, so to speak. So like the Jets last year, they did a lot of things really well and graded very high, but obviously didn't perform well. So you just have those anomaly teams that don't get the results, but they're doing things right or wrong that you don't notice.
Yeah, in college, it's really pronounced for me, especially when the game was simpler, when there wasn't RPOs and more passing and the line of scrimmage, which still matters, but it matters so much in college with the disparity of 134 teams. And you can match that up to the point spread. Power rating dogs for me used to hit at 61, 62%, and favorites about 3.5% below that. It's not as good anymore, but power rating dogs will still hit roughly 56, 56.3%. And power rating favorites are only going to hit at about 53%. Sounds pretty low when you need to hit 52 and change to get there. But I still use it because if I like the other side and I find out that, wait a second, I'm getting cheated on the line, then there's no way I'm going to take a team that gives me a 47% chance of winning based on 35, 40 years of data. I want those power ratings to guide me, even though I'm going to be more comfortable, especially in college, with power rating dogs. In the NFL, like you said, Chris, the differences between power rating dogs and power rating favorites is not as much. The sample size is much lower. I may only have one line that's completely off what I've said in a particular week, sometimes 2, 3, or 4. It's a lot closer in terms of whether or not dogs win more or favorites win more in terms of when my line is off.
I want to just get back to this comment because, a lot of there's pompous comments made that if somebody has a model that produces numbers that are far off, then they don't have a model or it's worthless. And they can continue to believe that, but that's not the case at all. I mean, in all honesty, I'm looking at it, and I've discussed it with other people. We're looking for directional more than specific numbers. So that's where the value is coming in on it. And that's why if we're only looking directional, well, then the amount the amount that it's that direction really isn't as important as just the direction itself. That's the way I feel.
That ref comment is good. The Saints versus Rams is a very interesting thing. But no, I mean, you can get referee data on tendencies, home, road, stuff like that. How many frequency of penalties, but it doesn't add a major variable to it's guesswork sometimes as far as where it really impacts. But more important than that, power ratings should be used as guidelines more than anything else. They're not necessarily the be all end all because it doesn't necessarily take into account injuries or the extent of injuries. That's why situational factors are separate, because it doesn't take into account that a team is playing its third road game in 10 days and stuff like that. Whereas I'm guessing that what Cris is talking about with his model, it can emphasize certain matchup indicators where this team really does have an edge over this other team at the line of scrimmage or defending the pass or in special teams play or whatever. I just handle it in a different category than Cris does with his model. But we're looking for those instances when the model is off and there's a good reason why it's off and we think we have an edge.
Here's an interesting question. How do you two handle teams off can't wrong games or can't go right games? Actually, I don't understand.
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah. Dan, back to the drawing board.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue is how do you adjust power ratings? And I did have that little small tutorial when I was talking to Jeff Dawson last Thursday that you could refer to, or even better, you can take an hour and a half and learn from one of the other experts in power rating setting, and that's Paul Stone, who did a 3-part tutorial on it. And it's really about if like last week in college, my power ratings were 5 wins and 1 loss, where my line was better than what you saw out there. So I didn't have to adjust as much as other people. I didn't have to adjust SMU's power rating again after they played Nevada because I was already closer. My power rating said 20.5. The odds were 27 or 27.5. I think others had to adjust their power rating in terms of what Nevada accomplished. And then Nevada upset Troy last week. So anybody who didn't adjust strong enough with Nevada missed a Nevada winner against Troy. I didn't particularly have that game, but I didn't have to adjust those power ratings. When I'm off on my power ratings, then I have to adjust a little bit more than, maybe I missed something. So it's all built in terms of how you adjust. I don't know if that answers the wrong and the right, but there are adjustments you have to make during the year based on results and where your line was compared to other people's lines.
Joey brings up another topic, which is why I had a losing season in 2016. Rule changes can make quite the difference, and there's nobody that knows for sure how much the kickoffs will change the way the games are operating. So you're going to have to be very cognizant of how that might be affecting, the process that you come up with as far as numbers. So I will be paying very close attention to the kickoffs and field positions and turnovers and scoring. And I'm just hoping that not too much changes, but something inevitably will. As mentioned previously, you've got to pay attention to the refs. You've got to pay attention to, the way they're calling games, because you can find patterns. You have to respect, the units that call a lot of penalties versus the units that don't call a lot of penalties, or it just seems like they pretty much, if they've got any patterns with primetime games. Hockley always had to seem to have to make himself the center of attention, and those games always were high on penalties. So it's not 5 years ago I didn't give it a thought. It's a thought every week now. So.
Yeah, two things about the kickoffs, unintended consequences maybe. I'm going to be watching how underdogs handle late game situations after they score. Are they going to do one of those weird onside kick kinds of things where you could give up field position real easily, but they need to get the ball, and now instead of losing an onside kick and you're at the 45-yard line, you may lose an onside kick and the other team's in field goal range already. So I'm watching those situations, and I'm also watching how teams are going to handle fourth downs, because I think we're going to see less punting and more going for it on fourth downs for a variety of reasons. Not only the return might be out a little bit deeper, but there are going to be a variety of reasons, and that might affect point spreads. It might affect over-unders. It's just something to keep in the front or back of my mind for the first 4 or 5 weeks, and chart whether or not we're seeing any patterns which how teams that are behind are handling situations.
I want to talk some games, and how about if we just go through this list and do what we did last year, because I think it's important going into week 1 and even week 2 and decide before the game is played what we can really learn from that game or not. So we don't care what the hell happens with the score, or we're trying to determine if it's going to technically really matter, so that after the game we don't overreact, so to speak. It's sort of like, hey, wait a minute, this is what the goal was to get out of this, evaluating this game. Let's stay on focus. So I want to skip to the Friday game before we go to the Thursday game, so just so it's an example. I'm not so sure I'm not so sure we're going to learn what we need to learn about the Packers or the Eagles in a game that's in Brazil. And just the way the schedule laid out last year, and the Eagles folded like a paper napkin last year. The Packers ascended against easy teams, and people taking them lightly. I don't know what these teams are going to be at the end of the year. What do you think about this game?
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a good exercise. Looks like at times I'm fading in and out of the picture, so I'm sorry if this is happening. I don't know. The internet connection isn't as good here. As far as this game, what I want to learn going in, I don't know that I'm going to learn anything about Green Bay. I feel comfortable. I know what Green Bay is. I want to learn about Philly's chemistry more than anything else. I need to learn about their secondary. I wrote team keys for every single team in my preview, and I'm high on Philly. A lot of people are high on Philly, but as Cris mentioned, I think last week, he has some doubts about Philly. and I can understand that. And I want to see if they fix some areas. Does Barkley help offensively? Does the attention that they've finally given to the secondary reduce the number of touchdown passes they've allowed? And Jordan Love is a great, good first test for that secondary. So I have more checkpoints that I want to learn about Philly after this game.
No, I agree. I just, if either team doesn't have their act together, it's really not going to change my opinion of them. If Philly comes out firing on all cylinders, I'm not going to be drinking the Philly Kool-Aid. I could see them coming. I could see either team coming out flat and slow or strong. I mean, I'm just not going to be judging either team after week one. Is my point. The Baltimore Kansas City game, I think, is a little bit different. I think we kind of need to expect Baltimore to show up, don't we?
Yeah. I'll make a couple of comments about this game. We'll go into more detail on Thursday because the Thursday show with Ted is primarily going to be one part on that Thursday night game where we could talk specifically about it. But you are right. Baltimore has had this game circled as their incredibly crazy game plan that they came up with against Kansas City, where they shot themselves in the foot. This is a show-up game for Baltimore because every game in that, you can't go 0-1 and then say, oh, we'll make it up later against Cincinnati and against Baltimore and against Pittsburgh and stuff like that. That's a hard division. I'm not worried. I'm not going to learn anything about Kansas City, I don't think. But Baltimore, I need to see something out of them. I agree.
Yeah, this is an early season revenge spot, which is, we always like to look at that. And we know, the Super Bowl winners don't traditionally perform well. They lost last year to some no-name group out of the Midwest. I don't think Kansas City can change. Anything Kansas City does is not going to change my opinion of them. If Baltimore shows up flat as a pancake, that's going to be a little bit alarming. Jacksonville, Miami, thoughts?
I want to address something Hector just said about neutral and giving more attention to a young squad. I want to first pivot just a little bit before I forget, because Hector has a very good question about neutral field, because we just talked about Green Bay and Philly. I agree in principle a little bit to that with the Green Bay Philly game, that the more established team might be a little bit better off. But I especially defer to when Jacksonville is in London and they're playing two very young teams, new coaches and stuff like that. When you have a new coach going to London, like New England is going to go to London, and even the Bears with a new quarterback going to London, I'm going to be interested in that supposedly neutral site, giving a little bit of an edge to Jacksonville. Maybe the slightest of tendency where I might favor Philly in this game. But comments Philly has made about they don't want to be there is kind of weird too. So I don't know if Cris has any thoughts on that particular one.
No, I didn't.
What did you mention? You mentioned the Jets in Miami?
Yeah.
Or Jacksonville.
No. Jacksonville, Miami. Are you there? We see you.
I don't think I'm going to learn anything about either team. Jacksonville was one of the four teams since August 15th that I've slightly changed my opinion on. I was neutral on Jacksonville. I think I'm a little bit more bullish on Jacksonville right now, but week one's probably not going to influence my decision for either team.
You know what? They've been strangely quiet, and I think things are a lot different for them entering this season. In fact, the Dolphins have been pretty darn quiet too, when you really think about it, as far as I'm concerned. So
Yep.
I kind of like that when teams keep their mouth shut. And I mean, Tua had those comments to make about his ex-head coach, but nobody's chirping.
Yeah.
You know, teams that are like just taking care of business are the ones that I actually look at the most, if that makes any sense. Pittsburgh, Atlanta.
Because Jacksonville.
Pittsburgh, Atlanta is going to be interesting to watch. I don't think Atlanta's got a lot of issues themselves and a lot of changes that both teams do. It's important that both these teams get off to a great start. So I think even if one of them gets off to a bad start, there's a lot of moving parts. You can't say that that's who they are technically. What do you think?
Okay, I think the game's more important to Pittsburgh, again, for the same reason. They're in a tougher division and they can't afford a loss in what's perceived, at least most of the summer, as a toss-up game. I think Atlanta could overcome a loss, but even with that information, there are two things. I think I will learn something from both teams. I will learn something about what's going on with the new coaching staff in Atlanta and the health of Kirk Cousins. We're all wondering what's going on there. And with Pittsburgh, whether you like it or not, I don't care that Russell Wilson talks a big game or this or that. I need to see that his pocket awareness is better. I need to see that Pittsburgh's not going to be winning games 16-13. I really need to see something out of this offense, even though their offensive line may not be where it needs to be right now. They basically have one good wide receiver, and that's about it, a very competent tight end. I don't care. I need to see something out of Pittsburgh's offense, and I need to see something out of Russell Wilson that reminds me of 2020 and not 2022 and 2023.
No, that's true. I mean, if somehow Wilson comes out there and has, you know, flashes of the old self, that's going to change perspective. And I think we're just all assuming Cousins is going to be back and healthy. So if that's not the case, that's going to be throwing things for a loop also.
Yeah, I think we learned something about these teams.
I think it's one of the most unusual, one of the most interesting matchups from a betting perspective carrying forward, just so that there is something to glean. Vikings, Giants, boy, that's the I don't care game of the week for me.
Well,
I'm not sure. I you know what? I care so little about that game at this point. You have any thoughts on that game?
The only one takeaway I'm going to have is how they scheme to keep Sam Darnold out of turnover hell. I just want to see what they're going to do with Sam Darnold to make him a better quarterback. As far as the game is concerned, one of these teams is going to be 1-0, and they're probably not as good as 1-0. And one of these teams is going to be 0-1, and we're going to say, same old story with these teams. They're already behind, and they've got Minnesota has three teams that, you know, they're expected to be behind in the standings. 0-1, losing to the Giants isn't good. And if the Giants start 0-1 in a division with Dallas and Philly, you know, what confidence are they going to have moving forward? I mean, basically, you might see the end of Daniel Jones before you know it if they lose some games early.
Yeah, I don't have much
Donald
to add.
was 5 for 9 in
exactly
preseason.
Right. It's a no-win situation for these. I actually kind of expect Minnesota to be okay. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I like their coaching. I like both coaching staffs. Power rating wise, I don't think Minnesota should be favored, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, there was a big service release, so that's what moved that line. It's not going to surprise me at all to see the Giants come back and be the favorite. Carolina and the Saints. Carolina did pretty good, well on the picking up casts-off. They went all defense on casts-offs, didn't they? After rosters were announced.
Yeah, they went heavy on defensive backfield, showing that they perceived themselves to have a weakness there. Considering their roster wasn't that strong and they lost 3 players, including Brian Burns, to free agency from the defensive side of the ball, we knew that picking up players from other teams would actually strengthen their roster because the roster started at such a low level. So that part is good. And Saints have been unreliable at home in divisional games for so long. It's hard for me to get excited about either team. I'm not sure I'm going to learn anything unless the new staff makes Bryce Young into Peyton Manning or something like that week 1. We'll find out. Year 2 rookie quarterbacks, they tend to have a little bit of a bump up. Not all of them, obviously, but some of them improve. The game's too fast for them year 1. So we'll see what the new coaching staff does with Carolina. I'm not going to place too much weight, at least I don't think, unless we see a 30-6 result, Chris. I'm not going to place too much weight in the results week 1 in this game.
Yeah, I think the only surprise would be if Carolina, all of a sudden had an offense that was functional and working cohesively. That would perk my ears up if they actually were to get their offense together. Patriots and Bengals. Boy, that's the Bengals. As the stomach turns over there, is Chase going to play? What do you think?
It puts a variable that Cincinnati really hates to have in play here because New England's not going to be that good this year. But any internal stuff that's going on with Cincinnati, we know week 1, results of week 1, since he could lose this game and still win 10, 11 games, because that's what happens with week 1. Teams are not always ready to play. Burrow looked good, but it was still limited action that he was in. And if he doesn't have Chase, and if T. Higgins is, whatever T. Higgins is, how healthy is he? Boyd is gone. He's not on the team anymore. Joe Mixon is gone, so fumbles could go up, even though I wasn't a Joe Mixon fan from a yards per carry perspective. They're introducing more turnover variable without Joe Mixon in the lineup. So strange things could happen in this game. So I don't know quite what to think, and I'm cautioning myself not to overreact.
Well, it's been pointed out that the Bengals have had high expectations for several years, and they've come out of the gate losing. So losing games they were expected to win. So, I'll bet you, I think we find a little bit out, in this game, just the Patriots, if they have any sort of character at all, they've been just ridiculed the entire summer, and they know that they're supposed to be the doormat. So do they come in hard and play hard and surprise on effort, or are they going to lay down at the beginning? So, who knows?
No, they'll play hard for their coach. The issue I have is I have such low expectations for their offense. I don't know what they do to generate points. Jared Stidham is not a guy who stretches the field. If I'm a defensive coordinator, I pinch up, guard against the short passes, the tight end stuff, the running back play. I don't think we're going to see continuity in New England's offense. They're going to be the kind of team that wants to shorten games and make it 16-13.
The Tennessee Bears game, boy, that's just one of those matchups. It just seems like a mid-season matchup already of unpredictability. Tennessee, I would imagine, could get off to a slow start before they kind of get their feet beneath them. So if they perform poorly, that's not going to shock me, but it's not going to surprise me if they do well either. The Bears have they have expectations on them. It's not going to surprise me to see them come out strong out of the gate for one game, but it's not going to sell me on them. And it's not going to surprise me to see them struggle.
Yeah. Hard matchup for me because I see two teams that the needle is pointing up, at least enthusiasm and confidence wise. What Tennessee has done to their roster, including a trade last week, has to bode well for their optimism. I think Tennessee, maybe we're sweeping on Tennessee a little bit. Maybe not week one, Chris, but somewhere down the road. I think Tennessee is finally looking a little bit more positive in roster construction. And Chicago, they have really high hopes offensively after having a dormant offense all this time. Nothing would really surprise me this week one. I'm worried about continuity with their quarterback, Will Levis of Tennessee. That's the only issue I have. Maybe it's a bad matchup going against Chicago's secondary because Levis has the ability to throw and connect deep. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't against Chicago. But overall, I'm kind of okay with both teams being in a lot of games. I'm not crazy about Chicago's coaching staff. Maybe I'll be wrong. I'm in learning mode week one is basically what I'm saying.
This Arizona Buffalo game is interesting. I think a lot of people are going to be anticipating Arizona's resurgence at offense again. Everybody's expecting good things offensively from Arizona, and I realized last night that I'm like, wait a minute. I really would like to see that happen there. They were always, Murray was always exciting when they were putting up points, and he was the one quarterback if you were betting against, and it's the last drive of the game, you're just, oh no. But I kind of realized in my head last night, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm assuming that they're offensively going to be back because they've added tools. Murray's healthy, and I'm assuming facts, not in evidence. So I want to see them do something offensively, and their defense was a complete and utter disaster. So how are they going to stop Allen? If there's one thing that's gone right for the Bills, it's the offense. So that's going to be an interesting part of the game. This really seems like a Bills type of game, even though Arizona's supposed to be the side. So I want to see if Buffalo's if Arizona scores a lot, is it going to tell you more about the Arizona offense or more about the Buffalo defense that everybody is worried about?
Yeah, well, I'll get Buffalo out of the way first. I don't expect to learn much about Buffalo. I'm pretty sure I know what Buffalo is. A lot of people are going to be watching their rebuilt and new wide receiver core. I have expectations for the wide receiver core that I'm not worried about my evaluation of what they're going to be in this particular offense. So this really comes down to what I feel I'll learn from Arizona because their roster is still under construction. They did some good things last year. They had some leads with and without Murray in the lineup. They couldn't hold them because when push came to shove, they had no defense to prevent the come-from-ahead loss in the third and fourth quarters. And I think it's still a work in progress for them. I think they're going to be, what's the right word? They're going to be in contention almost every game on their schedule. I don't think they're going to be scared of getting involved in maybe some shootouts. And Murray, like you said, maybe pulling games out or maybe a backdoor cover or whatever the case may be. I think they're not going to run away and lose a lot of 30-10, 30-13 games. And I would agree, probably leaning Arizona in this game. But there are some parts of Arizona that are just incomplete. They're trying to get the roster together, and it's not quite together yet. If Josh Allen has one of those games where he doesn't press things and he doesn't try to win it all by himself, we know that Buffalo is capable of being a top 5 team. When he presses, that's a problem. So I'll be learning about Arizona, whether or not we see anything unusual that tells us that they're better in a couple of different areas. I won't be learning much, I think, about Buffalo.
Yeah, that Arizona, they didn't fare well last year, but they had some spunk last year. So
Yeah.
there's something about them that's interesting. Uh, Texans and Colts, first week divisional matchup. I think
Yeah.
Indianapolis has to show up for this game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, Indianapolis has the revenge factor. There's a lot of I still don't know what we're going to get out of quarterback Richardson. I hate the fact that the defense didn't show me anything different in August that they've shown in regular season and preseason for the last 5 years. I know what Indianapolis secondary looks like, and it's not pretty. So once again, Indianapolis is going to have to do things offensively. When Jonathan Taylor's ready to do that, he's the rare back that can take over some games. There's only about 3 in the NFL, and Jonathan Taylor is one of them. We know that there's tape on Stroud. We know that Houston is going to come, at least I feel like they're going to come back to the pack against better defenses. Even though I would like situationally to bet on Indianapolis in this game, this is not a big test for CJ Stroud going against this defense. So it kind of evens things out. I don't think I'll learn enough about Houston this game. I'd love to learn more things about Indianapolis, but unfortunately, they don't seem to be changing their stripes. They seem to be plodding along and doing the same thing they always have. Finally, their GM is under fire. 3 of their draft picks, I believe, were cut, maybe added back to the practice squad. But Indianapolis' pattern of drafting so guys in the NFL draft has got to change.
Usually those, like a trend like Birdie posted, they've lost 10 years in a row, week one. At some point, it does become an issue that you actually have to pay because it becomes the talk of the town, and then it does become an added weight.
Yeah.
So it is a factor.
You want to go 0-1 in a division by losing a home game? That's not a good recipe for making the playoffs.
I'm interested to see what, that type of matchup, a divisional game out of the gate. If Houston stumbles or does well, I'm not. I think it's more what we want to see about Indianapolis than what we want to see about Houston on the road in a divisional game, so to speak. I mean, if they come out really, really strong, don't we kind of expect them to?
Yeah, I think with my game plan with Houston is regardless of how good they look this week, when they go outside of the division playing that first place schedule, I think there will be fade opportunities. You just got to bide your time. You got, for me, and I think for a lot of people, why we do work in August, July, and so on and so forth, is to make sure we have a game plan with these teams. And we could pivot if things go wrong or we see something like with Philadelphia last year. But my initial game plan going in is to wait to fade Houston unless we get a power rating situation or something like that. Because I think when they go outside the division, they are going to play tougher quarterbacks and tougher opponents than they did a year ago.
Well, the Raiders are getting all the money so far. No matter what happens in this game, I'm going to need more games to have any sort of handle on either of these teams.
Yeah, people know that I was bullish on the Chargers. I thought Jim Harbaugh wants to build his team his way, and the draft was 99.9% perfectly built his way. Everything I've seen since then tells me that this will work, but it may take 6 games, it may take 10 games, it may take till September 2025 to do this. Herbert is not ready. He didn't get enough reps with this offense. There were other parts of the defense, the front seven, that maybe they're not quite ready yet. Vegas is an incomplete team, but catching them week one isn't necessarily as bad as I thought it was going to be a few months ago. It's not that I'm higher on Vegas or lower on Vegas. It's that I'm lower on the Chargers to start this year. And eventually I will pivot to when I hope to be ahead of the curve and saying Harbaugh's got it right now. But it's a transition going from his style of play to Staley's style of play. And I'm a little bit concerned. So I understand, Chris, why the money is coming in on Vegas. Vegas is 1-0, wonderful, but they still have an incomplete roster. If the Chargers are 1-0, that's a good sign for them. But I don't know what it is, but I still think they're not quite ready right now.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It's just giving more than a field goal seems like too much in this toss-up situation, especially when it's essentially a home game for the Raiders in many ways, as far as what the fan support will be.
When you get games like this and you get a hook, when you get the 3.5, and this line was as high as 4, when you get a hook of 3.5 in games that you think are close to toss-up games, maybe one team has a 55% chance of winning straight up, but if you factor in the numbers 1, 2, and 3 into the equation, it flips because there are a lot of 3-point games in this. And I think 3 in the hook is important for games like this.
Agreed. Well, I think Washington and Tampa Bay is interesting because nobody seems to be expecting much out of either team, or they're expecting extreme results with both teams. So I just want to see. I have a high opinion of what Washington did off season. I worry that I don't know. Part of me says they had enough there that just wasn't being properly utilized. And now that they've got good management and better coaching, maybe they can improve a lot faster than people realize. And I don't know I think Tampa Bay, quite frankly, could be one of those teams that just has an atmosphere about them where they just have a free and loose culture there. I think the quarterback situation there is just perfect. I'm not writing Tampa Bay off.
Now, I think with Washington, a lot of moving parts because they wanted to change the culture. So they changed the roster, I believe, more than any other team in the NFL. So it's how fast those parts come together. One thing I'm looking for each team. For Washington, does Daniels have a little bit of the Burrow factor in it, where he has that it factor? Because Burrow at LSU, his final year, put up numbers that were never seen before. And then Daniels at LSU, his final year, put up numbers that were Burrow-like. How does that translate to the NFL with maybe more of a moving part roster than Burrow had to deal with Cincinnati? But Cincinnati was still a losing team before Burrow got there, obviously, because they got the number 1 pick. Tampa, I'm not worried about Mayfield on the offense. Obviously, they have a first-place schedule. They have some challenges. Atlanta's better, so on and so forth. What I do want to figure out is losing 3 veterans on defense, defensive line, linebacker, their best cover cornerback, how that comes into play. If we see any defensive slippage, does Mayfield try to do a little bit too much? So I do have a checkpoint with Tampa Bay's defense, and I do have a checkpoint with just what does Daniels bring to the table year 1?
Yeah, it just seems like things are more likely to go. I think I just don't. I think Tampa Bay is going to have a hard time really making an easy game of it, if that makes any sense. For some reason, I just feel like the variance is more on the Washington side, and Tampa Bay is going to be Tampa Bay. And it's going to be a matter of whether Washington
I agree.
take care of it, take care of their business.
Agree completely.
Denver Seahawks. This is going to be a difficult test for Bo Nix out of the gate. Seattle's been strangely quiet. You know what? I have a feeling that I don't know what it is, but it just feels like Seattle could really make something out of themselves this year. And I think Denver's just looking for, they're not going to, they don't have high expectations. They just need to show improvement, and they need to do what they want to do, if that makes any sense. So, what do you think on this?
This is probably, how Gil and others go through this exercise. If there's one game you want to cross off the schedule that you don't want to bet or something like that, what would it be? It would be this game, I think, for me, because I have no expectations for how Denver goes right out of the box, and no expectations for the end of the Pete Carroll era and then the Mike McDonald era with a new defensive line, essentially some injuries at linebacker. I can sit here and say, and I don't think it's a weakness to say, I don't know how week one will play out in this game. And let me just see how it plays out and react from there. I generally don't have an opinion on how this game will go.
Learn and watch and learn.
Yeah.
Cowboys and the Browns. Jeez, everybody's down on these Cowboys.
Yeah.
I think. Cleveland's got to show something this game, as far as I'm concerned. If Dallas comes off a little flat, I don't know. If Cleveland just lays a turd, that's going to be disappointing to see. I think Cleveland's a decent team that gets underrated. What do you think?
Yeah, Cleveland is like Indianapolis. They don't know how to start a season. I'm trying to look at my numbers here, what I have, but I believe they're just awful week one in terms of getting out of the gate. And of course, we don't know what Watson brings to the table. When is his internal clock going to get better? With all that being said, in Dallas, we know that Dallas is kind of reactive. They haven't done much of anything. They did sign CeeDee Lamb, so he's good to go and all that. And Cleveland's a good home team. I don't understand. I honestly don't understand, according to my power ratings, how Dallas could be threatening to be -3 in this game. I'm not a Watson believer, but
you mean Cleveland -3?
It's almost like Cleveland -3. I'm sorry. My power ratings still have Dallas higher than Cleveland to start the season. So I'm not a Dallas fan. I'm not necessarily a Cleveland fan, but I would give Cleveland at least a 50-50 shot at winning this game. I wince when I have to make a play that supports Deshaun Watson, because I don't know. I mean, I wish he had a preseason where he could show that he's more confident in the pocket, but he hasn't had that preseason. I don't know what we're going to get about Watson. We know that Nick Chubb isn't there still. So Cleveland is going to have to pass some to get this done. But I like Cleveland's defense. I like Cleveland's defensive coordinator. And Dallas may be one-dimensional as well, unless you think Ezekiel Elliott has found the fountain of youth.
A question on the total. I think the total seems to be right where it should be. What do you think?
According to my numbers, and I kind of guess at totals week one, so I'm not the perfect person to answer this question, but I did set this total higher than what the total is. So I think it is a tad low, but I do understand it, because if I'm Cleveland and it's a close game, I'm not trying to make Watson win the game. because if you make Watson try to win the game, he may lose the game. So I understand the mindset, and I respect the line on the total, even though I made it higher.
Rams Lions, scary game as a Lions fan. I think we've got the early season revenge factor on that again. I think the Rams are undervalued in the market. I think the Rams will come to play. And I just, as a fan, I'm hoping the Lions are able to weather the storm. What about you? What do you think on this game?
I can make a case for the Lions covering the spread, but I still, 3 in the hook is too much to pass up. Yeah. 3 in the hook is too much to pass up. So I like the Rams. I don't know if they're going to win the game. It was a close game in the playoffs. They had their chances to beat Detroit. It's a matchup game that I think really does lend itself to 50-50. Detroit is on a parallel track to me to Philadelphia regarding their secondary. Both teams used picks in the first and second rounds on cornerbacks. Both Detroit and Philadelphia recognize the need that they have to fix the splash plays that are going against their pass defense. Now the question becomes, how fast did Philly fix their pass defense, and how fast did Detroit fix their pass defense? And interesting, Chris, both teams get stiff tests, like we said beforehand. Jordan Love is a good test for Philly's rebuilt pass defense. Matthew Stafford, especially a healthy Matthew Stafford, is a good test for Detroit's revamped pass defense. So matchup-wise, I think Detroit is good, really good. I think the Rams could be good. We'll find out. But I think matchup-wise, it's a good matchup for the Rams.
Yep. Jets and 49ers, I'm very interested in that one just because, the narratives coming out of San Francisco are not what you want to see from a team that's, going to go on and win a Super Bowl. So it just seems like they're already out of step coming into the season. And the Jets, for the most part, just seem to be sticking their noses down. They've got a rough year ahead of them, and they should have done a lot better last year. If they had any offense last year, they would have been in the playoffs. So, and we don't know what Aaron Rodgers we're getting. We haven't seen him play in so long. So, just so many questions on this game. But it's still extremely interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, an extremely interesting game. I agree with you completely. Rodgers is a weird X factor, of course. The Jets have done everything they can to surround him with more talent. Their offensive line is going to have 3 new starters, 2 of which are veterans. Their wide receiver core was reinforced, and Mike Williams is apparently good to go week 1. They've got 4 running backs that could do some damage, although not necessarily against San Francisco, because San Francisco's front 7 is pretty sound, although losing Drew Greenlaw bothers me. So, Chris, what do we think Rodgers can accomplish against a secondary that's the weak link for San Francisco? And San Francisco is going to blitz Rodgers and hope that he's gun shy first week after what he saw first week last year, when they blitzed him repeatedly and he lasted 4 snaps. On the surface, I wish this game was maybe week 5 or something like that, and I would be more involved with what I've seen with the Jets, because I know what San Francisco's strengths and weaknesses are. I don't know what we get with the Jets week 1. Maybe the defense, which is going to be really, really good. They're also going against a Shanahan offense that has a number of weapons. And they got Trent Williams back because he signed today. So they got Williams, they have Ayuk, Kittle's ready to go, so on and so forth. I'm more fascinated with what happens in this game than trying to predict what will go on in this game. I want to do the autopsy on this game more than I want to make a prediction on this game.
Yeah, I can see a storyline that goes well for the Jets and goes poorly for them. So I don't I think it's going to be important not to overreact either way, because I just see a formula for a rough game out of the gate, and I could also see the Jets doing very well out of the gate. We know that typically those Super Bowl losers don't fare well week one, so there's a little bit of a hangover. I agree with you. The autopsy is going to be interesting on this one. You had mentioned there were 4 changes. Your perspective on Jacksonville, your perspective on the Chargers. What were the other 2 teams?
Yeah. So Jacksonville, which was a neutral team for me, is kind of a little bit more bullish. I think people are sweeping on the fact that Trevor Lawrence is healthy. They still have a good wide receiver core. They have enough offense to get it done. Their offensive line isn't perfect, but you would rate it close to league average. And defensively, they still have one of the best pass rushers in the game. They've upgraded that defensive coordinator. I think we're sweeping on Jacksonville a little bit. Tennessee, I moved a little bit up. Quarterback play could make that wrong. But I think over the course of the year, I think they're going to be more dynamic offensively without Mike Vrabel there. They're playing more in-your-face defense against the pass, which is something that is better than what – I mean, I just don't like Indianapolis-type defenses that are so passive. So I think that could be a plus. Atlanta, with the acquisition of Matt Judon and what's going on with the rest of the division, unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I think Atlanta is the deserved now favorite in that division. Presumably, Cousins is ready to go. Even if he's not ready to go, he's an upgrade over what we saw in Atlanta last year. I mean, we can all agree that Atlanta was pretty garbage at quarterback last year. So if Judon has any impact on the pass rush, A.J. Terrell and others are going to make them pay in the secondary. This could be a team that I was negative on and now I'm neutral on. Not going to say they're going to be world beaters. I still think maybe they'll win only 9-10, but I do have them now as the clear-cut favorite to win that division. And then one other team, and I mentioned it already, the Chargers. I was gung-ho on them, and now I want to say, well, they're going to be better, but I really have to take a deep breath because they may not be better right away. I'm going to be more neutral on them to start.
Yeah, I think the Harbaugh euphoria might be a little much. By the end of the year, they could be one of the, have a lot of positives about them. But I don't think Harbaugh's in any hurry to have them winning out of the gate. He just wants to, get his team formatted the way he wants his team formatted. So, anything else on your mind?
Exactly. Question for you and the audience. Cris. Yeah. Cris, what are you going to be doing on Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon? Are you going to watch these games? Are you going to be multitasking? And I'd love for people who are here live, and if you're viewing this later, put this on the YouTube comments. What is your strategy week 1 Sunday? Are you going to be watching the red zone? Or are you going to be watching one particular game? Are you going to be going to the park and walking the dog? Cris, what are you going to be doing on Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon?
I will be watching Red Zone, I would imagine. During I don't feel compelled that I have to watch the games very much, but there's just something really nice about seeing the new uniforms all clean, and there's just a certain electricity, and you just want to see something with your eyes. And by a few weeks in, it'll be like, just show me the stats. Did we lose Ron here? he's been fading. So we'll see if he pops back in here. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm excited about watching the Sunday games. I think if things start to go south, I'm more inclined to want to not continue to pay attention or walk away. I like to pout maybe, but there won't be that much that I'm worried about, I don't think. So here he is. So with that in mind, that is obviously the most important thing you'll ever learn about betting. Oh, Ron, you're back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I could tell an Alfred Hitchcock story now. Yeah, this is what happens when you're remote. Boy, I lasted the full hour plus, so that was good. But yeah, I am kind of curious. I know you probably answered the question, so what I would say is I'll be multitasking, watching Red Zone in the morning, and then the afternoon I'll be compiling college data and NFL data, getting ready for the next week.
Yeah, I don't have to do any college work on Sunday, so that's kind of nice. So I'll be paying attention to NFL. What are the late games? Ugh.
Late games are usually bad.
Sunday night
Usually
game,
not
that
enough
Rams
games.
Detroit game is going to be good. That's a good way to kick off the season.
Yeah. I don't mind watching the Vegas Charger game because I'd like to learn stuff from both teams in that game. So that would be a game I would pay attention to. But usually I just flip around in the morning.
Well, that's the only futures that I took a shot on so far to answer the question was the Rams to win the division. I thought the price was too high, and got some Bears under on the alternate line. That's about it at this point.
Yeah, if you're asking about 14 futures, which is typical for the NFL, most of them were made in April and May. A couple of them were made in August when I compared the lines in Las Vegas. But most of my plays are in. I'm just fine tuning stuff right now. There's not much more I need to do in the futures, and with the previews already done, I feel less stress right now, Chris. And we talked about that at the beginning. You know, the idea is not to feel overwhelmed where you rush into a decision. So I'm okay with the pacing right now as we get ready for kickoff.
I agree. It's I think FOMO is a really bad trait to have, and I think you just can't do everything, and you just got to make sure that whatever you're doing, that you're doing that well. And that's one thing I learned from last season trying to do too much is whatever I do, just make sure you do it right and do it well, and don't worry about what you can't get to or what you miss.
Yeah. I do want to thank a lot of people because I know I put a lot of stuff out there, and obviously people who follow Chris might be new to me and stuff like that. Picked up a lot of followers recently, and I really am appreciative of that because really all we're trying to do is do some education. We're not necessarily going to say this team +3, this team -3, this and this. We're just trying to walk through and brainstorm things. And I ask questions of Chris. Chris asks questions of me. We're just trying to give people an idea of what we go through in order to prep for the season. In this case, next week, the overreaction show, where we talk about what we're going to overreact and what we're not going to overreact, what we learn out of the first quartile after we get through 4 weeks. Stuff like that, what we're learning to try to get ahead of the curve, what coaches we think are going on, what live bets, what's undervalued, what's overvalued. So I do appreciate that people find this, what we do valuable, because I kind of enjoy talking about some of the technique in the process.
Well, and it's also awesome because there's always people in the DMs or Discord or on comments that are providing extra information that we were unaware of or that we want to know also. Uh, it's a community. It's like a little mini community that is formed where people just like to learn and share information, and hopefully it just helps everybody that's involved. Uh-oh, time to go. We're going to be back on Thursday.
So, yeah, Mike, one closing thought. Yeah. So one closing thought from me is that on Thursday, we'll preview the Thursday night game and we'll try to have a topic of the day, and we'd love to have questions again that we can answer. But that's just a snappy thing where we could talk. I mean, literally the season is going to start just a few hours after our Thursday show. So it's kind of neat having a game right on the day that we're broadcasting with Ted. And Ted, hopefully we'll have some audio that he could share with us that gives a little bit more of a picture than what normally you see on other shows. So looking forward to that, Cris.
I am also. And with that, we're going to sign off. Hope to see everybody back on Thursday, and hopefully we'll have some other insight or some other ideas popping around in our head. That's it. Get some better internet for Thursday. We'll catch you guys later.